Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your coffee break. Many people talk. Many do research. Many try to connect to each other. Many try to spend funds at their best. But Europe is big. And we are still more than 25 countries, member states. Wouldn't it be wise to somehow coordinate all these efforts? The National Stakeholder Coordination Group, NSCG, does. Or does it just try to do so? Michele De Nigris is a leading delegate of the NSCG. He should know. Michele, where is the NSCG?
Good morning, Ludwig, and thank you for having me here. Very happy to be with you as usual. And I am simply going to try to give you some highlights about the activities and about the scope, and somehow some directions on the new and the plans of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group that I'm representing here. Very briefly, I think that Michael has mentioned the 3 time dimensions and pathways for the energy transition during his introduction. We want to look a little bit more to the long-term perspective, and we look at the 2050 perspective, where we aim to have a decarbonized energy system. So bringing back some of the words that we heard before, the Vision 2050 is some kind of orientation target, speaking the words of Pia Johanna. And here what we want to look at is at the system knowledge that is necessary to go towards this target. So according to the ETIPSNet Vision 2050, the future energy system will be characterized by a lot of renewable production, by the integration among different energy vectors, so grids and different sources, gas, fuels, hydrogen, and so on and so forth, through the storage and the so-called power to X. The central role as a backbone of the electricity grid, as electricity being the main vector of renewable energy, the use of a lot of different flexibility services along the entire value chain, and of course, a lot of digital technologies to link everything all together. We have heard this morning as well the outstanding role of innovation and research. This decade, 2020 to 2030, is going to be a decade of large-scale installation of consolidated technologies. So we will need to apply as much as possible the available technologies. But before we reach 2050, the IEA, for example, says that in their development and in their scenarios, that the solutions needed for a decarbonized energy system will be mostly based on technologies that today are only in the early development stage. So this calls for laboratory and in-site demonstration of the low carbon solutions before their large deployment. And this means that we have to prepare the future development with innovation. There is a lot to do, and the technologies and the solutions that we need to develop and to apply are very, very many. Tracking the clean energy technology progress, again from the IEA, shows that among the different technologies that are going to be needed for the decarbonization of the integrated energy system, only few, very few, are on time. Large effort is needed in the field, for example, of electrification, of digitalization, of data center and data transmission network, on demand response, on heating, on space cooling, on appliances and equipment, and on heat pumps. And we are very late on very many different technologies and solutions, and also aspects such as behavioral changes, such as district heating in terms of technology, or building building envelope. So there is a lot to do, and there is a lot of activity at stake and being programmed and being part of the different initiatives that are present and that are being implemented at European level. We all know about the existence of different, we can say, organizations that try to bring together the different levels of innovation. We need to act in different directions with a holistic approach, from the top to down, from the bottom to up, linking private and public, linking global, European, and local and regional aspects and activities. So there is already a coordination among these dimensions, thanks to the different initiatives that are ongoing. The European Technology and Innovation platform, for example, and if we speak about the integrated energy system, we speak about the ETIPSnet, already does that at European level, bringing together the different stakeholders, mostly driven by the industry, to try to elaborate plans, roadmaps, implementation plans to develop the necessary technologies and solutions. The implementation working groups inside the set plan want to look at the national level, bringing together policymakers, fostering the European member states' alignment in terms of their national plans towards common goals. The newly born partnership, of which we have heard a lot also this morning, the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, wants to bring together, in the same line as the ERANET, intranational, regional level activities, bringing together the different financing agencies to look at their programs and to try to align that as much as possible. Mission Innovation, together with the IEA, together with the Clean Energy Ministerial, try to do that as well as global level. The National Stakeholders Coordination Group as the aim and as the goal and the program to try to be a discussion platform working in all these three dimensions, so top-down, private, public, global, and local, to not to coordinate. I think that the word coordination group is probably not the most adequate, but to have a discussion platform so that all these levels can work together in the best possible way. We need to have this discussion. We need to have a discussion among the national and regional level, which is already somehow coordinated by the implementation working groups that somehow try to link their national programs. For example, in Italy, we have the so-called research for the system development. The intranational and the regional level are somehow brought together by the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, the ETIPSnet, and the other ETIPs, try to bring in the ears of the European Commission new and important and prioritized aspects to be funded, for example, through Horizon Europe. And of course, at global level, we have the mission innovation, for example, with the activities of the IEA, of IRENA, of the Clean Energy Ministerial that also want to foster innovation and collaboration at global level. We have heard a lot also this morning about the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, and if we look at this important initiative, a newly born initiative, as one of the means to try to bring together the different stakeholders at transnational and at local and regional level, I think we can have a good success. We all know that this initiative is made out of 7 so-called transition initiatives, and in the framework of the integrated electricity system or energy system, we mostly deal with the transition initiative number 1 on integrated net zero emission energy system, and the transition initiative number 5 in terms of integrated regional energy system. And they are very well and very strongly coordinated and connected with one another, looking at different specific aspects and working together quite well, at least we hope, from the calls and from the management of the projects onwards, the projects that are going to be financed under the call that is now open. But let us come back to our smart energy system, ERANET. One of the aspects that the National Stakeholders Coordination Group wants also to bring to the light is the important work carried out by the JPP Smart Energy System. Also, in terms of messages to the policymakers, in terms of what has come out for the policymakers out of the projects that the ERANET is presently funding. You all know that there are different working groups in this framework, and each of the working group has highlighted some of the policy briefs in its knowledge community. This is an idea to try to develop an informed opinion, and the outcomes should be and are brought to the attention of the policymakers. For example, the messages from the customer and citizen involvement working group to the policymakers at the light of the results of the projects that are financed under the Smart Energy System ERANET include, for example, the fact that the development, the innovation should be carried out in such a way as to include social sciences in research, development, and innovation program and projects. Involve the potential user group through creative and technology-centered design. Involve, and this is something that will come very, very often about the use and the importance of the energy communities as a very important tool also to counteract energy poverty on the one hand, but also to work and to foster innovation. From the consumer, I think, there is a small problem with the message on the slides, probably, but this is fine. From the regional matter point of view, it is important to look at guidelines for local cooperation, to look at demand flexibility and the interaction with the local authority, and to look at climate and to construct a climate of multilateral trust. We have so very many different messages coming from the different working groups, and I don't want to go too much into the detail to give you the entire list. All these messages are available on the platform and are offered to the policymakers then to be used. I will conclude my presentation here, and of course I am available for the continued discussion in the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grazie mille, Michele. Now we know much more, but as we want to know everything. Let's talk with people that have benefited from the NSCG, or at least want to benefit from the NSCG, before I call these people on stage. And while they come through the door, let's see a little trailer. In these virtual worlds, it's always a bit of a surprise whom you have at the end, but I see at least many. I do welcome George Paunescu. He represents the DG Energy of the Commission. I do welcome Orsolya Küttel from Hungary. She is there in the Energy and Cities Mission National Contact Point Ministry, responsible for funding, and she is a co-chair of the JPP SES, so you know the initiative quite well. I also welcome Ralf Eickhoff from the Projektträger Jülich, which is the funding agency that is involved in the JPP SES, and I think will also be involved in the CETP. Welcome, Ralf. I do welcome Adel El Gamal. He is the Secretary General of the European Energy Research Alliance, ERA. He will let us know a bit more about what that is. In general terms, I think it is what they call themselves the research pillar of the SET plant, whatever that means. He will tell us. And I do welcome Natalia Garcia Mozo. Despite of her name, she is in a Bavarian organization. Welcome. You are the head of the SME advisory services at the Bayerische Forschungsallianz, the Bavarian Research Alliance. You give support to the SMEs. So obviously, to some degree, you stand for the industry, and you are also pretty much involved in the Enterprise Europe, whatever that is. We will see. And altogether, Michele will let us know what they think and know about NSCG. So I give the floor to these people. Whoever wants to start, let us know what you think about the NSCG, the state of the art, the ambition, the vision, the mission that Michele has explained. Then we will get into discussion. So the bravest person first. I told you 99 seconds for a first input. Who is brave enough to do it? Or like in school, I nominate one. Adele.
Okay. One today. Ladies and gentlemen, so the European Energy Research, we we are in fact a formal plan, so we are part of this. What we do is we really research activity through 18 across 250 in Europe. That's what we do. I try to louder. I think it was very interesting, Kelly, to maybe give it
Okay,
higher
sorry to
political.
interrupt you. Sorry, Adele, to interrupt you. We still have the problem with your sound. I please ask you to call Dirk on the cellular phone number you have, and we try to get you in the studio via cellular phone or via phone call and show all the people a picture from you, okay? See you in a few minutes. Sorry for disrupting. Ludwig, the floor is yours again.
So, is it in the Holy Bible that says the first will be the last, or the other way around? Adele, I hope we will get you and can listen to you. So, the next one. Come on, let me nominate George. George, what do you know? What do you think about NSCG?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, just to check if you can hear me well.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you, Ludwig. Thanks to the organizers for inviting us here. In terms of the NSCG, well, we know them well because we work very closely with the European Technology and Innovation Platform for Smart Networks, the ETIPSNet, which is a Commission initiative that is very important for progressing the research and innovation agenda in this area. So referring to the NSCG, I would look at two aspects. First is the place in the wider framework, and I think it has a place which is well defined, and it aims, well, we heard Michele's presentation, what are the aims of the group and how it works with the different facets of the story. So I think when drawing up the policy agenda, it's important to have a good coordination among the European and the national levels. There are several ways of doing that, and NSCG is one of the elements that contributes to that. That's the place within the wider framework, which is quite complex, as we've seen. And in terms of the role, yes, this direct liaison is important for strengthening the synergies across the EU in discussing about research and innovation in this area and closing the gaps in research and innovation agenda. We heard that we need to progress fast. So this is key. Thank you.
For a good input. We will dig a bit more into it, whether it's only research or also industry involvement, etc. We will come to that, George. Next one, I would call upon the two representatives of funding agencies that are involved in the JPP and also in the CETP, Orsolia and Ralph. Ladies first, Orsolia.
Okay.
What do you think?
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well.
Perfect.
Actually, I find it very interesting to have this discussion today because after having heard what George from the European context has said, what I is that in my role and experience working with the Hungarian applicants as the national contact point for Hungary in Horizon Europe and also the related initiatives such as the JPP SES, as you heard, I'm also quite active in that program. So what I hear from Hungarian stakeholders is that these project owners often focus on a given challenge. Of course, something that is raised in a call for proposal, for example, and then they build their project proposal to answer that question, that challenge by a very technical, pragmatic solution. However, what they are lacking is a bit the long-term and impact-driven approach, how their they are actually often not aware, I believe, that the results of their research, development, and innovation project feed into the E-level policy cycle. So just as how we heard, these bottom-up initiatives, the bottom-up projects, can actually have a great impact and influence on the longer term and more top-down process of setting strategies. So
we'll see how NSCG can help, huh?
Exactly. So I think that's the main role. What I can see is that we can make sure that the tangible results of the projects is not only the technical solution, right? But it's also how they generate the strategic knowledge for policymakers. And I think this process, so of course now I'm speaking a bit as a voice of applicants and industry players and researchers, but still it's a two-way street or many-way street actually in this sense, because we need to make sure, and that's why I find this initiative of CG very important, because they can create, these discussions can create added value, and we can make sure that we create a more efficient and more streamlined ecosystem where policymakers are linked to end users, or the global and local dimensions meet as well. So as for my opening contribution, that's what I would have wanted to emphasize. So thank you.
A lot of connections to be coordinated. Ralph, how about German's voice?
Yeah, just to build on what Australia already said, the National Stakeholder Group is an important platform to exchange lessons learned from funding programs. As Australia said, often the applicants have to answer technical questions, but that the results will have an impact depends on many other aspects that every funding agency is experiencing these difficulties to design funding programs that finally have an impact. And every funding agency around Europe has made its own lessons learned, and we can exchange those lessons learned in this national stakeholder group. Although there are other different bodies in the JPP SES, it's important to discuss this with different people from different perspectives and different angles, and of course listen to the industrial needs, because finally we need the industry to implement these solutions and to bring them on the market. It's not the goal and objective of the funding agency that finally they do it with public money. The results have to be taken from the industry, and therefore this platform is useful to exchange lessons learned, discuss them with the industry on a European level, and see what will finally have to be improved that we can achieve reasonable and also valuable results at the end of the day.
Thank you, co-moderator. That's the ideal bridge to Natalia. Natalia, what the heck is Enterprise Europe and what network to do Enterprise Network Europe, and what has it to do with the Bayerische Forschungsallianz?
Okay, thank you, Ludwig, and thank you for inviting us today to this discussion. To be very short, I can describe you first of all the Enterprise Europe Network. This is also an European network, and this is the biggest support network worldwide, supporting small businesses. Supporting small businesses in all kind of issues or topics that has to be with European Union, from business or internationalization, business cooperation, to the participation in the European funding programs for research and innovation. So it is actually, I think we have more than 600 partner organizations and more than 6,000 advisors, not only in the member states, but also in the third countries. So the potential in order to connect our clients with other companies in third countries or in other European countries, it's quite huge. At the same time, we are not only providing first level information services or even tailor-made services to the companies, but we also play the other role in giving feedback to the European Commission and to the stakeholders from the needs and the challenges that companies are facing in, at least in my case, in the area I'm active, the challenges they are facing in commercializing these innovative ideas. Because most of the time, and this is the link between Enterprise Europe Network and Bavarian Research Alliance, we are the European funding organization in this region in the south of Germany, and we support hands-on the companies in applying for the European funds for research and innovation. In the case of energy, maybe Innovation Fund or LIFE or EIC Accelerator or many others from Horizon Europe.
Natalia, when did you come across NSCG for the first time?
This year, and yes, well,
you take notes. Yes. What do you know about NSCG, or what would you expect from such a coordination group?
Yes, I know that this is a coordination group of stakeholders in exchanging information and experience, knowledge about the national policies regarding energy in the different member states, trying to come across with suggestions, policy briefs, etc., to the European Commission in order to at least try to define a common framework for the energy transition or for an efficient energy transition. And this is for me unstable, but for the companies, it's like another level. It is another level. They are really fighting to commercialize very innovative ideas because the legislative framework and condition are still very old and they are not 2 steps beyond the companies, but 2 steps behind.
We will talk about that. But first, we have a first message from Adele. I have heard that Adele is on the telephone now. We have a picture. Adele, can you give us your insights as to the state of the art of NSCG as you perceive it?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Oh, you hear me? Okay, excellent. Sorry for the glitches. I don't know what happened. Okay, I certainly agree with at least the statement that I've heard, and I will not repeat them. But I would like maybe to take a more political perspective, linking with the current crisis that we're living in. We need somehow to reinvent the way we collaborate across the union for a quicker and I would say more higher impact, while we have thinner margin for maneuver than before. This means that we need to adopt a wider perspective, and I like very much with what was said already, that we need to stretch beyond national challenges and beyond topical silos towards the broader challenge of the transition. And in that respect, I believe that national stakeholder coordination groups have a key role to play, and I would see it across 3 different dimensions. First, the first axis is really across the different stakeholders, including from government, research, industry, the private sector. The second axis is, of course, geographical, from the region towards the national and towards the European level. And the third axis is certainly also across the various transition challenges, because I think that we have too much work until now into technology silos, or at least sectoral silos. So this would be really my take about the use and how, the value of the National Stakeholder Coordination Group and how they should evolve in the future.
Let me take the opportunity, as we have you on the line. I don't know how long it stays. Ask you a question. this morning, I don't know if you followed us, we had been discussing a lot about knowledge generation, and we also asked people the question, what is knowledge all about? I mean, from your understanding, you are saying that we need the energy transition. Others have claimed that we need the knowledge to do it. What is the knowledge that we need from your understanding?
Thank you for this question, and I think it's pretty obvious, but it's a fundamental question, and it's not so easy, really, to answer to it. From my perspective, and I think this was highlighted by Michele also this morning, I believe the most important issue is really to take a top-down and a holistic perspective to the transition challenge. We have all been historically used to adopt a rather silo-based, let's say, the bottom-up. We look into technology, we see how it can contribute, or in the best case, we are in a sector and we try to understand how the sector works. But we tend to reason with, we always tended to reason, to make the reasoning within a bounded space. And I think we all understand now with what is happening that the challenge is about dealing with the system. And here I'm not referring to the energy system. Everybody understands what is the energy system. I'm referring to the societal system as a whole. The energy crisis shows perfectly how a shortage of gas supply affects the whole energy system, and this across all sectors, and all energy vectors, of course, but it affects also all parts of the society. We see that in the streets today, unfortunately. And this is the approach that we have adopted at ERA to analyze the EU response to the energy crisis. And by the way, I just mentioned that we will be releasing tomorrow a flagship report, which is called ERA Manifesto on Repower EU. It will be downloadable from our website. And this analyzes Repower EU from a top-down, cross-sectoral and system perspective. And in that respect, I believe that the CETP that we have mentioned many times already, and to which ERA was invited to contribute shaping the structure, is an excellent example of this approach and should constitute as much as we can a blueprint for further collaborative work on the transition. So the knowledge is about aggregating all these different dimensions. And in that respect, the role of coordination group, the National Stakeholder Coordination Group is of course central for implementing such a broader approach.
Probably that is what you meant, Michele, where you said in the CETP, I think it is the TRI, what is it, 1 and 5, that deal with the systemic approaches. That's something. But before we get into that, I would, by the way, this is not a big interview only. If you feel like you have a question to your colleagues on the stage, please do so. Please raise a hand or speak up. We can get into a discussion, of course. I try to get it going with my questions only. One question would be maybe to George or also to the others. Some have said, and I think you have mentioned it, George, that it is a value chain or something that says that goes from policy making, so someone has to create the framework, to programming of the research, innovation activities, then to research as such, to the projects, and then to the, I call it execution or implementation. But people have said, okay, it has to be faster. I think Michael said that in the beginning. How can we speed up implementation of solutions that we really desperately need for the energy transition? How can we speed up, George? Any idea?
Looking at this, I will actually call it cycle rather than the value chain, looking at the programming part, implementation, and then feeding back into the programming with the lessons learned and the results. Well, I think speeding up, there are a number of ways of looking at it. One important aspect here would be the market uptake. So we are very interested to see that the funding, which I think for research and innovation in this area there is consistent funding available, but compared to the huge challenges and needs, it might be considered scarce. So I think that at the end of the cycle, we need to see how replicability of solutions, scalability works, what is the market uptake, and that would contribute on the one hand to speeding up the policy cycle for programming the next generation of research and innovation actions, and on the other hand to make sure that whatever we have mature, not only in terms of technologies, but also in approaches, in business models, in innovative services, in ways of operating the grid, all these are actually used and they are put into best practice. And these are fed into other kind of funding which we have available. Because I wanted to just to recall that from the current financial European envelope of 1.8 trillion euros for this programming cycle, about 1/3 is earmarked for the Green Deal objectives. So we have a lot of ways of funding what is mature, what could achieve economies of scale, and what could be rapidly deployed.
I mean, you don't want to call it a value chain, you want to call it a cycle, which is obviously very valuable view on that. But at the same time, and I call upon Natalia, I mean, we are creating with billions, we are creating information, knowledge, insights. We all know it has to get to the industry, it has to get into products, it has to be delivered. But everybody seems to be a bit disappointed how long it takes, how difficult it is to take it from research projects to a real product, Natalia. I mean, you deal with that. How could we improve? What could we improve in, I don't know, speeding up, coordinating, or whatsoever?
Well, thanks for the question. I think there are several factors that are bringing this situation to the stage. And one of them is, from a point of view, the communication. How political stakeholders, also the European Commission and national governments are informing and communicating the new policies or even also the funding programs available for the companies. Several times we think that there's a new fund, there's a new way to finance big projects or ideas, and then when you read the conditions, that's not so attractive as we thought at the beginning, and this is something we have to think about. And on the other side, I think that we have to be very aware that the type of money the companies need in order to not only to commercialize a very high innovative solution, which is also very risky, but also to scale up the business model, the public funding is not enough. They really need investment. And the European investors are really conservative. And so they, at the end of the day, a lot of companies decide to go for foreign investors or not European investors. So there is a it's a pity, because in this way we are losing a lot of opportunities to maintain jobs and to maintain companies in Europe. This is my experience, and I think we have to work on these 2 points. I mean, access to finance, also to investments, and how we communicate and how we inform companies so they are well aware about the funding opportunities they have.
Michele, I try to put the ball in your field a bit. I mean, I haven't heard that NSCG deals with the financing of product development, at least not yet. Should it?
Well, This is now a difficult question because we are now in the discussion today, I think, at a very high level. I mean, we are discussing the fact that the energy transition takes too long with respect to what is needed. But on the other hand, we already have several initiatives that are organized in such a way as to make at least part of these things happening. We have the national, we have the policy makers speaking to align their national programs in the implementation working group. We have the industries, at least the large part of the industries, speaking in the ears of the European Commission, in the ATIPs. We have somehow the local financing or the national financing agencies developing and financing their own projects in somehow as much as possible a coordinated way. But this is at the end, this is not sufficient. This is not sufficient because at the end we see that the speed is not quick enough.
How about involving, I mean, as Natalia pointed out, at the end of the day, we don't only need the funds for the research, we need the investment. Is there any link between the NSCG, which is more or less research, development, innovation network, to the venture capital world, the sustainable finances world, and whatsoever? Are there links?
We have spoken about that sometime also together with you, Ludwig. These links are not yet there. And I think we should perhaps think about having some activity also in that respect. Some things already happen, for example, in the international level, for example, in the so-called 3-DEN initiative with the IEA, where a certain number of demonstrators are decided to be developed, and all the stakeholders, including the World Bank, have been engaged in such a way as to make these things happen, and these things happen within 2 years' time. So this is, I think, quite of importance. I am very interested also in all the aspects that link with the small and medium industries as well, because I think that there is for sure a lack of communication both to the SMEs and from the SMEs up. And I think there can be a role also of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group. But what we have planned up to now is to act very pragmatically in terms of try to set up discussions about points, about developments of potential common interest for all the different stakeholders. For example, we have discussed about the regulatory sandboxes some time ago. We have discussed about the development of rooftop photovoltaics and so on. And another aspect that I think is important that we discuss in terms of subjects, and this is already in the pipeline, is another quite important subject that comes very strongly out today in terms of opportunity, but also in terms of potential issues is the flexibility needs at local level. And we have heard so very many times the word of energy communities. And this is probably the potential of the energy energy communities in terms of their internal organization and the services they can give to the system, also in terms of flexibility, I think is a pragmatic way to try to involve the different stakeholders in one small piece of the discussion, but quite pragmatically. And I think that if we want to have success, we should involve not only the energy field, so also different stakeholders, policymakers, industries, the management, the project management, but also more in a horizontal way, also looking at the actors of society that can help us in the just transition.
Michele, let me ask Orsolya and Ralph. I mean, Orsolya, Ralph, how does that sound to you? We are discussing a broad systemic approach, addressing the SMEs and even the venture capitalists. I mean, you are representing mainly funding programs. You are not even the ones, I don't know exactly, but you are not even the ones that do the strategies in the ministries. You are not the political people. So how does that sound to you? We go for a big vision of the NSCG and you have your program. How can we get together? How does NSCG help you?
Yeah,
If I'm,
maybe.
okay.
Yeah, maybe I start. I completely agree with Michele to follow a pragmatic approach. For example, with the CETP, we have a new funding scheme in Europe that covers all energy-related aspects, starting from PV, wind, the integration, the grid, then buildings and industry. And at least in our timeline, as we did in the JPP SES as well, we want to implement an impact network. And with this impact network, I think it would be a great link to the NSCG to bring together capital investors with the industry. That's, let's say, we are acting in a constrained world. So we, from a funding agency, we are not allowed to change the constraints and boundaries. We can only act within these boundaries. And I think to create an impact network, as we did for the JPP SES and as well for the CETP, is a first step towards more impact, towards a more take-up from the market. Nevertheless, we also have low-hanging fruits of, for example, the by the knowledge exchange between the different bodies that all have similar but maybe different objectives and topics, like the CET partnership, the ETP net, then on international level, like the IEA with ISCAN, with mission innovation. Often the same people engage in those initiatives that have running projects with similar topics, similar approaches, and the low-hanging fruits are that you connect those projects to each other, that they learn from each other and exchange the knowledge, because the solutions might be slightly different, but finally addresses the same objective and target, and therefore these are the low-hanging fruits. And this is, as a funding agency, we act within these boundaries and we try what we can to bend the rules, but finally the decision is taken by the government and by the ministry.
Did I get it right? I mean, you say, okay, as a funding agency, I can fund projects in my limitations, but what I hear is that you say in the CETP, with the knowledge community, with the impact creation network, and then in cooperation with the NSCG, we can take it beyond what we can do as a funding agency. Is that more or less the message?
Exactly. So that's a way forward, I see, where we can extend the impact with this creation of the impact network, that Of course, we have to review the process within the impact network, then reflect what we can do better. But I think that's a valuable approach to have finally the solutions implemented in the market.
Zolja, the other representative of a funding program.
Yes, such a great discussion already. I have quite a lot of ideas, but firstly, just to say that I could clearly echo everything that Raf said, because we are in a very similar position. So of course we have similar experiences. And what you just discussed, I think that also links very much to the project chain program concept that we started working on in the RNET Smart Energy System. So I'm smiling because this is one of my favorite topics. And those of you who know me know that I've been engaged in that discussion for a long time. But now I don't want to redirect the topic of today's discussions to that word. And because I'm wearing several hats, let's say, as Ludwig said in my introduction, I'm also not only energy NCP, but mission NCP. What just occurred to my mind while Michela was speaking and Natalie raised the aspect of how to link investment to innovation and research and development funding is actually, this is also, for my understanding, the main concept or the main novelty, if you like, of the missions. So I'm thinking of the 5 missions under Horizon Europe. And the interesting part is that even though, let's say, theoretically, they are designed to be under the Horizon Europe program, the aims of the missions are so much bigger than that, right? So it's not only about research, development, and innovation, but eventually it's more about implementation and investment. A lot of discussion going on how to attract private investment as well. So in my role as a representative of the cities mission in Hungary, I work a lot with different ministries, because as Ralf also explained for the German case, it's very much the same in Hungary. I'm coming from a funding agency, but the strategic planning and the policy making is with the ministries. So, for example, in my role as supporting the climate neutral smart city mission, I'm in discussion with a lot of different ministries, because we have a different ministry for innovation, we have a ministry for territorial development, we have a ministry for technology, which includes, of course, the energy aspect. So just to close my line of thoughts is that I feel that NSCG could act as a kind of a mission implementing body for specific energy related needs. So NSCG could learn and probably cooperate with, and now I'm looking also at George, with the different East bodies who are working already to have discussions with EIB and private investors to convince them to join their forces for achieving the goals of the mission. And that could be the same for CETP and for the clean energy transition as such, not only the program itself.
So as you are pointing to, George, I mean, you're representing the EU level here. To what degree could the NSCG help you, and I'm talking to you as the EU level now, help to get to the member states level needs, ambitions, contributions? What would you expect from the NSCG in that term?
Well, looking at the EU level, I think things are very well defined here, and we are guiding ourselves towards achieving the goals in the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, the SET plan, which now goes under through a revision process. So I think things are well defined here, or were well defined. They are evolving, and we'll move to a new context. But for me, between this part, which we know well, we work well with it, and the national level, that's the NECG role, the liaison that could bring these two worlds together and could make sure that things are aligned, there are no gaps, or if they are, we aim together to close them.
George, you talk about the set plan, and I hope that we have Adele still with us, at least his voice. Are you here, Adele?
Yes, I'm here.
You are. I mean, the ERA, somewhere it says the ERA is the research pillar of the set plan. And we discussed that. I mean, we are discussing beyond research a bit. And the NSCG, as I understand it, takes research beyond the research as such. How does that sound to the ERA? How does that sound to you? Is that a new task, or what would you expect from the NSCG?
Okay. I mean, I think you could not hear when I was introducing ERA. So yes, we are the formal research pillar of the set plan, and what we do is basically we coordinate research activities across about 250 research organizations and universities across Europe. So what we see is that we still have the impression that it's very difficult to achieve a high level of alignment between the national priorities and the priorities which are set globally at the EU level. And in that perspective, my hope is certainly, and this is maybe a more personal perspective, is that given the current circumstances and the urgency that we're feeling today, that there will be more, I would say, traction for the funding agencies and for the national programs to get together and really collaborate more than in the past. In that respect, we have a lot of expectations from the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, which, as I said earlier, is we believe very well structured as broader transition challenges, which are expressed in a broader way, which can accommodate where individual, I would say, projects and national regional priorities can fit within a broader perspective. So we believe this could, as I said, could be a blueprint to be expanded for higher collaboration and higher convergence towards the EU objectives. Again, that the set plan is being revamped at the moment, and the idea of this revamping is precisely to foster increased collaboration between different member states and affiliated countries.
We are turning in the last leap already. Everybody can maybe give an advice to Michele, to the NSCG as a last word here. I mean, NSCG, and you described it, Michele, wants to be an organization, a network, whatever, but at the end it wants to create a relevant dialogue. It wants to have a relevant mission and vision. What would you guys advise the NSCG through Michele, who listens? What would you give as an advice to the NSCG? How could it develop it into such a dialogue promoting something? I'm trying, Michele, to avoid the term institution because it's not.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And if I may add one word, I would, as a first action, change the acronym between the NSCG to NSDG, because this should be the National Stakeholders Discussion Group, not coordination. I think that also this would clear a little bit some potential misunderstanding. The NSCG does not want to coordinate. There is enough coordination around without the NSCG being on top of that.
So, Michele, I rephrase my question to the panelists. What would be your advice to the NSDG? One last word from everybody, and then we have to close already. Sorry for that. Come on, the ladies first in this case. Natalia.
Okay, I go first.
You got in contact now. You have a first wish to the NSDG.
I really welcome a discussion group, but taking into account the times we are living today, I would really recommend you to come back to us as soon as possible with also practical suggestions and proposals for our policymakers and for the companies.
Gracias. A word from our funding program owners, Ozolia.
Yes, so my wish would be to diversify the participation of different stakeholders in the NSCG, so in NSDG, because as you said, it's about discussion, and the more we are, the different angles, the more different angles we can raise. And yes, in my role as a funding agency, I always welcome when I can work together with policymakers. So I think that would be my addition. Thank you.
You always have the same mind drive, so you can say, yes, I agree, but you can add something.
No, I want to contradict your thesis, Ludwig, because I think that the NSDG is still a relevant body. If you look at the CET partnership with the current call that is still open, we have demonstrating flexibility as one call module. So that is, I've looked into the implementation plan of the ETIP SNet. You will find in very many cases of their use cases demonstrating flexibility as or has to be implemented.
Yeah.
So I contradict your thesis. It's still a relevant, or it's already a relevant body where we discuss the needs for the implementation.
So keep going, Michele. George, you had the first word, I think, today. Now you have the last word.
Okay, thank you. Some views from Energy DG towards NSDG. So going back to
Ludwig, I would like to add something, if possible.
Oh.
Going back to the revision of the set plan and what I mentioned first, the place of NSCG and its role, I think we need to have an eye on what happens there and the things which are moving. The place is very clear, works within the ETIPSnet, and it works well. The role might evolve based on the discussions of today and based on how the overall framework of the set plan evolves. And going back to the policy cycle and the three main aspects, so the programming part, the implementation part, and then closing the loop and feeding back. Looking at the programming part, there's feedback from ETIPSnet and from the community, of stakeholders towards the European cycle, programming cycle. And there's also, which works well and takes into account national views. It should work well the other way around, bringing the European programming cycle and the programming objective closer aligned with the national objectives. I think that was mentioned. In terms of implementation, we have a big community of projects. You might know it well, the bridge community at the European level, which means shared experiences, best practices, and feeds back into the policy cycle. NSCG could have a role here, mirroring or making the liaison between this EU level association with similar national ones. And I think one important part is the closing the loop and feeding back into the next policy cycle, the lessons learned, and looking at the gaps that could be perhaps improved, and also looking back at market uptake, replicability, scalability, and putting the best use the results of the projects. And I think here again, the evidence from that part of the closing the loop part, the evidence and then sharing the experiences and approaches between the EU level and the national levels could be one of the remits of NSCG.
Okay. And what would be your vote, NSCG or NSDG? Think about it. Thank you very much, everybody, all panelists, for sharing your insights. Let me say goodbye at this point, but I'm sure that we will meet soon.
Yes, Ludwig.
What is your takeaway now? What did you learn?
That I confirm the fact that we will meet soon, because there is going to be on the 22nd of November a meeting organized in the framework of the NSCG or NSDG, you call it as you like, dealing exactly with the flexibility needs at local level. And we want to organize it, well, it is going to be organized in Milano as far as the physical part is concerned, but we will ensure also remote participation with exactly the same approach that I've heard as a takeover today, to enlarge the discussion platform in horizontally and vertically. So vertically with respect to the different levels of decision on the one hand, but horizontally also in terms of stakeholders to be involved. So you already know, you already mark your agenda. I will, and together with Ludwig, we will contact you very, very soon. Really, I think this is once again a very interesting discussion and a lot of very important inputs for me. Thank you.
And still only the beginning. Well, thank you again, everybody. We have to close down so you can get to lunch, but we would not be us if we would not invite you to work over lunch. What you can do on the conference platform, you find a way to organize one-on-one meetings with either people, participants, or entire organizations. Check that, please. You can organize one-on-one meetings over lunch and also for the entire conference, and I understand even after the conference. So you are invited to do that, and you are also invited to prepare for the afternoon sessions. We invite you to join either a session at 1:30 or end at 3:30. So at 1:30, we have two parallel sessions, one which is called From Academia to Market, more or less what we had been discussing, and organizing it via business clusters. That is also a type of organization that can help us taking the research to the field. And in parallel, we have a session on Don't Reinvent the Wheel. In the JPP SES, we have the Digital Platform Provider program where we call upon providers of ICT solutions, modules, or whatsoever to contribute to one or multiple projects, so to the entire program. How does that work, and what do we expect as a program, and what do such DPPs expect from the program? So these two go in parallel at 1:30. And then starting 3:30, we have two parallel sessions, one called Innovation Answering Regional Needs, funding for regional energy systems. Michele had pointed that out, and we have seen that in the JPP and also the CETP, that the regional, the sub-national level may play a big role in the energy transition. So we discussed that, and in parallel, we have invited a project called INTNET, which deals with interoperability. This is a European-funded project, and we would like to draw some strings between the JPP world and this INTNET project. So it's about interoperability, standardization, etc. Don't forget to have a nice lunch, but also don't forget to reconnect 1:30. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.